The city lights were cold and bright, shining over the wet streets like fake stars. People walked fast, busy with their own lives, not looking at anyone, not stopping for anyone. Big screens flashed ads for food, robots, and space travel. But the little girl in the corner saw none of it. She sat under a broken metal sign. Her arms wrapped around her knees, her clothes dirty and torn. She had no shoes, only bandages on her feet. And her skin light purple with small glowing marks showed she was not human. She was an alien child, maybe 12 years old. Though no one knew her name, and she didn't remember her real age. People called her Rat or Street Ghost because she moved fast and stayed quiet, but she had a real name once, long ago. Before everything was taken from her that night, like many others. She watched the food stalls from a distance. The smell of roasted meat and sweet steamed bread made her stomach growl. But she knew better than to go near last time. A vendor hit her with a stick and told her to get lost, so she waited, hidden behind a crate, hoping someone would drop food or forget something important. That's when she saw him, the human man in the long black coat. He was tall, with short gray hair and a strong face. His clothes were clean, sharp, and expensive. People moved aside for him without a word. He was not just rich, he was important. She didn't know who he was. But she could feel it as he stopped at the vendor. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a silver wallet. He paid for his food and walked away, the steam box in one hand. But something slipped from his coat and hit the ground. The girl's eyes locked on the silver wallet, thick with cards and credit chips. No one saw it, no one but her. She ran to it like a whisper, picked it up, and held it tight. It was heavy, real, and full of power. With this, she could eat for a week, maybe even buy a blanket. Maybe even get off the street for one night. Her heart beat fast, not from fear, but from the strange feeling inside her hope. She looked around, but the man was already far ahead. She could turn the other way and disappear. No one would stop her. But something inside her made her feet move toward him. Not away, she ran, weaving through the crowd. The wallet tight in her hand, every step was a choice. Every breath was a question. Why was she doing this? Why not keep it? He entered a tall building with metal guards at the door. She stopped near the edge, afraid, unsure. One guard turned his head slightly. Looking right through her, she stepped back into the shadow, shaking. But then, the guard looked away, and the doors began to close. In that 1 second, she ran forward, sliding between the heavy doors just before they shut. Inside, everything was quiet, clean and bright. The floor shone like glass, and the air smelled like cold machines and flowers. She saw the man ahead, walking toward a private elevator. She ran again, calling out, her voice small and soft, "Sir, sir, your wallet." He turned slowly, surprised, for a moment. He looked down at her without a word. Then his eyes dropped to her hands, where the silver wallet rested. She held it out, her arms shaking slightly. He stepped closer, took the wallet, and looked at her. Not angry, not smiling, just thinking. "You returned it," he said, in a deep voice. She nodded, eyes low, ready for him to tell her to leave. He reached into the wallet, pulled out a credit chip, and offered it to her, but she didn't move. "No," she whispered. "I don't want it." That answer made him pause. He looked at her again, this time more carefully. "What's your name?" he asked. She said nothing, just backed away and ran toward the door before he could stop her. She was gone like smoke. Later that night, in a quiet room filled with screens, the man sat alone, replaying the security footage. He zoomed in on her face, her eyes, her hands. "Find out who she is," he told the system. "I want everything outside." The rain returned, washing the streets clean again, but the girl was still there. Hiding in the shadows, she didn't know it yet. But everything had changed. The wallet she returned would not be the end. It was just the beginning. The rain had stopped. But the air still smelled like metal and oil. The girl sat under a broken bridge. Her arms wrapped around her knees, her eyes staring at nothing. She should have kept the wallet, she thought. It could have changed her life, but something inside her said no. And now she was back in the same place, cold, hungry, and alone. She didn't know that the man she returned the wallet to was not just rich or powerful. He was Earth's top diplomat on the planet of Navarra. A man trusted with peace talks, war secrets, and more credits than anyone on the street could dream of. His name was Ambassador Rourke, and he never forgot a face. The next morning, she woke up to the sound of soft footsteps. Her instincts kicked in. She was ready to run. But when she peeked out, she froze. It was him. The same man in the black coat, standing in the dirty alley like he didn't belong there. He was holding a food box in one hand and a hot drink in the other. He placed them on the ground, stepped back, and said, "Breakfast?" The girl didn't move. Her eyes full of mistrust, Rourke sighed, crouched down, and looked at her at eye level. "You returned my wallet." "And you didn't take the money," he said. "That's rare." Still, she said nothing. "I want to know why," he added. "Why would someone like you give back something worth so much?" She finally spoke, her voice dry and quiet. "Because it wasn't mine." That answer made Rourke raise an eyebrow. He looked around the alley, the cracked walls, the trash, the cold floor she slept on. "Do you live here?" he asked. She nodded. He didn't ask more, just stood up and turned to leave. "Come to this place tomorrow," he said, dropping a small card on the food box. "If you want something better." Then he was gone again, like smoke in the wind. The girl looked at the card. It had no words, just a black circle with a gold line through it. But somehow she felt it meant something important. The next day, she waited outside the building where the humans stayed. She had washed her face with cold street water and tied her messy hair with a piece of string. Guards at the gate looked at her, ready to send her away. But when she showed them the card, their eyes changed. One of them touched his earpiece, then nodded. "You may enter," he said. Her heart thudded as the door opened. Inside was nothing like her world. Clean air, soft lights, quiet music in the background. She followed the hallway until she reached a room with large glass walls. There he was again, Rourke, sitting at a long table with a warm drink. Waiting for her, he pointed to the chair across from him. "Sit," he said, gently. She sat, not knowing what to expect. "I watched the footage again," he said. "You had many chances to run. But you didn't. I've worked with soldiers, spies, even royal guards, but none of them have your eyes." She frowned. Confused, "I'm offering you a chance," he said. "Not for money, but for something real. I want to test you." He slid a small device across the table. It lit up and showed a puzzle mix of lights and symbols that made no sense. "You solve this, you get food, clothes, and a safe place to sleep," he said. "You fail, you go back to the street." The girl looked at the screen, her fingers trembling. She had never been to school, never read a full book. But she had eyes that saw patterns and a brain that remembered everything. In 10 minutes, she tapped the final symbol, and the screen turned green. A soft beep echoed in the room. Rourke leaned back in his chair, impressed. "You just solved a military-grade encryption test," he said. She didn't know what that meant, but his voice sounded like approval. He stood up, walked to a shelf, and pulled out a small blanket and a key card. "You'll stay in the East Wing guest room," he said. "There's food, a bed, and a bath." She didn't move. Afraid it was a trick. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you helping me?" He paused, his face unreadable. "Because I see something in you," he said, "and maybe I owe the universe a favor." that night. For the first time in years, she slept in a real bed. The sheets were warm, the pillow soft. But sleep didn't come easy. She kept thinking of the puzzle. The man and his strange words, far away in a hidden room. Rourke was speaking to someone on a secure call. "She's different," he said. "Keep an eye on her. But don't scare her. I want to know everything who she is. Where she came from and why she's still alive outside." The stars shone over the city. But deep in the shadows, something else was watching. Something that knew who the girl was and wanted her gone. The sun rose behind the tall glass buildings of the human sector. Its golden light touched the edges of the alien slums below, but never reached inside. But today, the girl was not in the shadows. She woke in a clean bed, wrapped in soft blankets. Her stomach full for the first time in years. The warm room felt like a dream, and she was afraid to move in case it vanished. She stepped out of the bed slowly, feet brushing against a soft rug. The clothes given to her were simple but knew no holes. No dirt, no smell of the streets. She stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing the face looking back. The dirt was gone. But the eyes were still the same sharp. Quiet and full of questions, a knock came on the door. Soft but clear, she opened it a crack, only to find a young human woman with a kind face. "Good morning," the woman said, smiling. "The ambassador is waiting for you in the garden." The girl followed in silence. Passing bright halls with smooth walls and guards who didn't look at her, they reached a glass door. And beyond it was a quiet garden, green trees, real birds, and the smell of flowers she had never known. Rourke sat near a fountain, reading a small glowing tablet. He looked up as she approached, his face calm. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. She nodded, not trusting her voice yet. He gestured to the seat across from him. And she sat, her hands folded in her lap. "I'm going to ask you something," Rourke said. "And I want the truth." She waited, silent. "Why are you alone?" he asked. "Where is your family?" Her eyes lowered, her fingers gripping the edge of her seat. "Gone," she said. "A long time ago." "How?" he asked. "War," she whispered. "Humans came to our village." "Burned it." Rourke sat back slowly, the tablet still in his hand. "I'm sorry," he said, voice heavy. "I was part of that war." She looked up, confused. "I didn't burn your village," he continued. "But I gave the orders that made it possible." Silence fell between them, the sound of birds, the only noise. She stood up, ready to run. But he raised a hand. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said. "But I'm not here to erase the past. I'm here to fix the future." She looked at him. Her eyes filled with anger and confusion. "Why me?" she asked. "I've seen liars, spies, and killers," Rourke said. "But you returned a wallet when you had nothing. You could have vanished. But you chose honesty." He stood and walked to a nearby table, where a small metal case waited. He opened it and pulled out a small device, half bracelet, half communicator. "This is a link," he said. "It's used by my most trusted team members. I want you to wear it." She stepped back, shaking her head. "I'm not one of you," she said. "No," he agreed. "You're better." He placed the device on the table and walked away. "I'll be gone for 3 days," he said. "When I return, I want your answer." After he left, the girl stood in the garden for a long time. She looked at the birds, the flowers, the fountain, and then back at the device. She picked it up and turned it in her hand. It lit up, scanning her fingers, then dimmed. She didn't put it on yet. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her mind spun with questions. Why would a human care about her? Why offer her a place in his trusted team? What did he really want? She stepped out of the room and walked the quiet halls. No guard stopped her, but she felt eyes watching. She found a door slightly open, and inside was a room filled with screens. Footage of the city, news reports, secret documents. And in the corner and old picture, dusty, forgotten. It was a photo of a burning alien village, the same glowing trees, the same tall cliffs she remembered as a child, and standing among the soldiers. Was Rourke younger, in full uniform, her hands clenched? The pain and fear from long ago rising again. She ran back to her room, slammed the door, and locked it. She stared at the bracelet on the table. What was this? A trap? A trick? Or a chance? But what she didn't know was that someone else had seen her enter that room. A shadow moved through the hall after she left. A voice whispered into a hidden communicator. She found the war photo. The voice said, "Proceed with the plan. Asterisk the next morning." The girl didn't come out of her room. The light from the window slowly moved across the floor, but she just sat on the edge of the bed. Her eyes were fixed on the bracelet, still glowing softly on the table. She hadn't touched it since last night, when she found the picture of the burning village. Her village, she remembered the smoke, the screams, the sound of metal boots crushing the ground. She remembered hiding under a broken wall as fire ate her home. And now, the same man who gave the order to destroy it was offering her a future. Why? A knock came, soft and slow. She didn't answer, but the door opened anyway. It was the same woman from before, the assistant with kind eyes. She placed a tray of food on the table and looked at the girl with worry. "You're not a prisoner here," she said gently. "But you can't hide forever." Then she left. The door closing behind her. The girl stared at the food, but didn't touch it. Her stomach growled, but her heart was heavier than hunger. Later that evening, curiosity pulled her from the room. She walked the halls quietly, past guards and machines. She found herself standing in front of the same room from last night, the one filled with screens and secrets. This time, the door was locked. She turned to leave. But a voice spoke behind her. "You're not supposed to be here." She spun around. Heart racing, it was a boy human. Maybe 2 years older than her. He had short hair, sharp eyes, and wore a small badge with the same black hand gold symbol. "I saw you last night," he said, stepping closer. "You were in the archive room." She didn't speak, just stared at him. "You found the photo, didn't you?" he asked, voice softer now, of the village. Her silence gave him the answer. He sighed and leaned against the wall. "My name's Cade," he said. "I work with Ambassador Rourke." She looked away, arms crossed. "Why did he do it?" she asked, her voice low. "Why did he destroy my home?" Cade hesitated, then spoke. "It was a mission," he said. "A terrible one from a long time ago. There were lies. The government told Rourke that your village was hiding weapons. They said it was dangerous. It wasn't," she said bitterly. "I know," Cade replied, but he didn't know the truth until it was too late. The girl's hands tightened into fists. "So now he wants to play hero and fix everything." She said, "Is that it?" "No," Cade said firmly. "He doesn't want to fix the past. He knows he can't, but he wants to make sure the same mistake never happens again. He thinks you can help him." She looked up, confused. "Me?" Cade nodded. "You see things others don't. You think fast. You're honest even when it hurts. You don't follow power, you question it. He needs someone like that." Just then, a loud alarm blared through the hall. Red lights flashed on the walls, and guards rushed past them. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice shaking. Cade looked at his wrist device, and his face turned pale. "Someone broke into the Eastern Data Wing," he said. "It was locked. Someone hacked it from the outside." He grabbed her arm. "Come with me." They ran through the halls, taking a side path that led to the surveillance control room. Inside, Rourke was already there, watching the screens with cold focus. He didn't look surprised to see the girl. "You're awake," he said. "Good." He pointed to a screen showing a dark figure slipping through a vent. Someone knew where to look, he said. They avoided every camera except the last two. The image zoomed in, showing a face partially covered by a hood. But the skin was the same light purple color as hers. She gasped, stepping closer. "That's—" "Yes," Rourke said, "another of your kind." Her heart pounded. She hadn't seen another alien like her in years. The figure was older, stronger, and wearing armor made of scrap metal and wire. There was a symbol on his shoulder, red claw over a broken star. Rourke turned to her, his eyes sharp. "Do you know what that means?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "It's the mark of the street clans," she whispered. "The ones who hate humans." And hunt traders. Rourke exchanged a glance with Kate, then looked back at her. "They know you're here," he said. "And now they're coming for you." The room fell into silence. The girl's hands shook as she backed away from the screen. Her past wasn't just a memory anymore, was alive. And it had found her, but she didn't run. Instead, she looked at Rourke, her voice steady. "If they're coming, what do we do?" The girl didn't sleep that night. She sat near the window, her eyes watching the dark sky above the city. Somewhere out there, someone from her own kind had broken into the Diplomat's building. They didn't steal anything, but they left a message, a warning. "We know where you are." She could feel it in her bones. They weren't just watching, they were waiting. And they weren't here for peace, they were here for her. The next morning, the guards doubled. Cameras scanned every hallway, and the ambassador kept her close. But even with all that protection, something didn't feel right. It was too quiet, too calm, like the air before a storm. Rourke gave her a communicator bracelet, now activated and linked to his command system. "You press this," he said, pointing to the small gold button. "And I'll find you in seconds." She nodded, but inside, she wasn't sure if anyone could find her fast enough. Later that afternoon, Kate offered to take her to the outer markets just for a short walk. "You've been locked inside too long," he said. "It's safe. We'll stay close." Rourke agreed, but made Kate promise to stay in contact. "I trust her," the ambassador said. "But I don't trust the streets." They left through a secured back door, a quiet path that led to a small market area. Shops glowed with soft lights, selling food, tools, and trinkets from across the galaxy. For a moment, the girl felt like a normal person, just a child looking at shiny things. She smiled at a colorful alien bird in a cage, and Kate handed her a sweet fruit from a vendor. It tasted like honey and stars, but peace never lasts long on Navarra. As they turned into a narrow alley to cut back toward the Diplomat's building, a shadow moved too fast. To silent, Kate stepped forward to check it. That's when the trap was sprung. A sharp sound hissed through the air gas. Kate coughed, stumbled, then dropped. Unconscious, she turned to run. But something grabbed her from behind. A hand covered her mouth. Another pressed a cold device against her neck. Her world went black when she woke up. Everything was dark and cold, metal walls, flickering lights, and the smell of oil and rust. Her hands were tied, and a strange humming sound came from behind the walls. She was on a ship, moving fast. She pulled at the ropes, but they were tight. Then a door opened, and the tall alien stepped in, the same one from the surveillance footage. His skin was like hers, light purple, with glowing marks, but older, scarred, and angry. "So you're the girl who returned the human's wallet," he said, voice low and sharp. "Did you forget who you are?" She said nothing, just stared at him. "I remember your family," he said. "Your parents were brave. They fought the humans. You dishonored them by staying in that man's house." "He helped me," she snapped. The alien laughed, bitter and cold. "He destroyed our world," he said. "And now he's feeding you lies, dressing you up like a pet." She stood up, hands still tied. "I made my own choice," she said. No one owns me. The alien's eyes narrowed. You have no choice, he said. You belong to your people. And we are at war. We will take down the human council, and you will help us. I won't. She said, voice shaking. You will, he replied. Or we will show the humans what you really are. He turned and left, locking the door behind him. She collapsed to her knees, her mind spinning. They were going to use her to frame her. Or worse, and no one knew where she was, except the bracelet. Her eyes widened. It was still on her wrist. Hidden under the sleeve of her jacket, her fingers shook as she pressed the gold button. A soft beep, then silence. She didn't know if the signal worked. She didn't know if Rourke could reach her in time. Back in the city, alarms lit up on the Diplomat screen. She triggered the signal. One guard shouted. Rourke stood up, face grim. Meanwhile, on the ship, the girl sat in silence, waiting, hoping, afraid, outside her room. The older alien barked orders to the crew. Take her to the outpost, he said. We move before the humans find us, but it was already too late. The stars outside the ship blinked once, then flickered. A shadow followed them. Silent and fast, Rourke was coming, and this time, he wasn't coming alone. The ship landed in the old ruins of a forgotten outpost on the edge of the desert moon. The sun was red, the wind sharp, and nothing around but sand and broken stone. The girl was dragged out by two guards. Her hands still tied, her clothes dusty and torn. But her eyes were full of fire. The older alien, the rebel leader, walked ahead of her. His back straight, his steps strong, he led her into the crumbling structure where a dozen others waited. All from her species, all armed, some looked curious. Others angry, a few whispered her name. Is it true? Someone asked, did she live with the human diplomat? She ate at his table, another muttered. They say he gave her a soldier's bracelet. The leader raised his hand, and the room went quiet. This girl, he said, turning to face them, returned a human's lost wallet instead of stealing it. She chose them over us. She forgot the screams of her people. The crowd murmured. Their faces hard. She will speak for herself, the leader said. Then turned to her. Tell them why you betrayed your blood. The girl stood tall despite the ropes on her wrists. I didn't forget, she said, voice steady. I remember everything. I remember the flames, the fear, the way they shot first and asked questions, never. I remember losing my family while humans marched through the smoke. The rebels listened in silence. But I also remember one thing they don't, she continued. I remember what it means to show mercy when I found that wallet. I could have taken everything. I could have run. I could have fed myself for a week, but I gave it back. Why? One rebel shouted. Because it wasn't mine, she said, and because I wanted to believe someone. Anyone could be different. She took a deep breath. Ambassador Rourke gave the order that burned my village. Yes, but he also gave me food when I was starving. He gave me a bed when I had none. And a chance to be something more than just a ghost. The leader narrowed his eyes. So you believe him? He asked. You think a human can change? She didn't answer with words. She raised her wrist and showed them the bracelet. Still glowing faintly, I pressed the signal, she said. He's coming. Not with guns, not with bombs. He's coming because he cares. The rebels tensed. Some reached for weapons. You led him to us. The leader growled. No, she said, stepping forward. I gave him a chance to prove himself, just like I'm standing here. Proving myself to you. A loud sound shook the ground. A sleek human ship hovered over the ruins, lights scanning the area. Rourke's voice came through a loudspeaker. Calm but clear. I'm here to speak, not to fight, he said. Let the girl decide. The rebel leader turned to her. Furious, you brought him here. She looked him in the eyes. "No," she said. "I brought us here both sides, if we keep hating. The war never ends. You lost people," she said softly. "So did I, but how many more do we have to lose before we stop?" The rebels stood in silence, their weapons lowering just slightly. Then the leader stepped closer, his face inches from hers. "If you walk out of here with him," he said, "you're no longer one of us. You're nothing." She looked around at all the eyes staring back at her, some full of judgment, some full of pain, and she said, "Maybe I was never one of you, but I'm not nothing. I'm a survivor." She turned and walked toward the light, toward the ship that had just landed outside the ruins gate. No one stopped her, no one dared, at the ramp. Rourke stood waiting, unarmed, his coat blowing in the wind. She reached him, her eyes wet but unbroken. "I came because you believed in me," she said. "But I stayed because I believe in myself now." He gave a small nod. "That's all I ever wanted," he said. Behind them, the rebels watched from the shadows. Some angry, some thoughtful, and the leader he turned away. Silent as the ship lifted off, the girl looked out the window one last time. She wasn't sure what came next, but for the first time in her life, it would be her choice. The ship flew quietly above the clouds, its engines whispering against the wind. The girl sat by the window, watching the stars slowly appear in the sky. She had left the past behind in the ruins, in the desert, in the eyes of those who called her a traitor. But her heart still carried the weight of everything she had seen, everything she had lost, and everything she had chosen. Ambassador Rourke sat across from her, silent, not asking questions, not giving orders. He knew this wasn't a victory, not yet. This was something deeper beginning, and beginnings are always heavy. When they landed at the human diplomatic base, the lights were brighter than she remembered. Cameras flashed, guards lined the platform, and voices called out from every corner. The story had already reached the council, the girl who returned a wallet, the girl who stood between two sides, and now, the girl who walked away from war. She stepped out of the ship slowly, her eyes blinking in the sudden light. People stared, but not in disgust, not in fear. They watched her like they were waiting to see what she would say inside the great chamber. Leaders from across the system sat at long curved tables, humans, aliens, diplomats, soldiers, all gathered in one place. Rourke stood beside her, but she stepped forward alone. She was no longer just a child from the streets. She was something more. They asked her questions, one by one. "Why did you return the wallet? Why did you go with the rebels? Why did you come back?" She answered each one in simple words. "I returned it because it wasn't mine. I went with them because they're part of who I am. I came back because hate only gives us more ashes." One council member leaned forward, an older woman with silver skin and wise eyes. "What do you want?" she asked. "After all of this, what do you truly want?" The room fell silent. The girl looked around, then up at the giant flag hanging above them, the symbol of unity, cracked and faded from time. "I want to learn," she said quietly. "I want to understand why we fear each other, and I want to help change it." The woman nodded slowly, then looked at the others. They whispered among themselves, debating, questioning, weighing, and then they made a decision. They gave her a place not as a soldier, not as a tool, but as a student, the youngest ever accepted into the Interplanetary Peace Academy, a school for diplomats, translators, bridge builders, the ones who speak between worlds. That evening, as the sun set over the shining city, the girl stood on the academy balcony. She wore a simple white uniform, the bracelet still on her wrist, upgraded but unchanged. It no longer marked her as a test subject, but as someone trusted. Cade joined her, holding 2 cups of hot drink. He handed one to her and leaned on the railing. "You did it?" he said, smiling. She nodded. "No," she whispered. "We did, far below." In the streets she once called home, a small group of children watched the newsfeed through a shop window. The screen showed her picture before and after. Dirty and alone, then strong and standing tall. The caption read, "Alien girl who returned a wallet now speaks for the future in the ruins beyond the city." The rebel leader stood alone, watching the same feed from a broken datapad. He didn't smile, but he didn't destroy it either. He watched and he listened. The world had changed. And it began with one small action, returning a wallet. The girl looked up at the stars. She didn't know what her future would look like. There would still be struggles, still be hate, still be moments of doubt. But there would also be choices. And this time, they would be hers, for the first time in her life. She wasn't surviving, she was living, and that made all the difference.